Thank you so much for joining us today, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
You've been doing VC in China for a decade now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you have backed some of the most prominent tech and internet companies in China. The list is so long. It includes Didi and Ali and Meituan and Meitu and Bilibili and Ganji58.com. What's different about investing today compared to 10 years ago when you first began?
The investment sourcing process, a large part of that, or a majority of that, is really finding the China equivalent of a US established internet business model. And fast forward 10 years from now, for the past 4 to 5 years, ever since the emergence of mobile internet, often is China first. If you look at the most valuable Chinese internet companies or technology companies today, there is no equivalent in the US. And in China, it's benefiting from, there's the large user base, right, domestic user base. There's plenty of talent, engineering talent in China. It's a unique set of regulatory environment, which I think is more pro-business and pro-innovation than a lot of other places. And there is less baggage in legacy business. The changing of generations from mobile to PC is much more drastic and much faster in China because there's just less legacy establishments. And from a demographics perspective, I think the users in China generally are younger and are more curious and more willing to try new things. And the strategy of the Chinese entrepreneurs and the internet businesses are much more aggressive in acquiring users and in penetrating new markets and in trying to encourage user to use their services. So all of this is coming together, is really getting innovation. You know, this ground is very fertile, and I think the progress in the past, especially the past 4 to 5 years, is staggering.
A lot of entrepreneurs say VCs have a short attention span, they're very impatient capital.
Right.
You know, they want to get their money out, they want you to list before you're ready.
Right.
Do you think that that criticism of venture capital is fair?
Well, first of all, from patience capital perspective, earlier stage venture capital investors generally have a longer holding period, so they are more patient investors by definition. But because of the fund cycle and because of the pace of investment, they generally have a more pressure at the tail end of the fund to get liquidity. So I think is by design.
So they are constrained by
design.
Cycle of timing, right?
Right, right. I think you may be referring to the new generation of strategics in China who are also very active financial investors. You know, the Alibaba, Tencent,
exactly.
Maybe SoftBank as a half strategic, half financial, maybe, or more strategic-like financial investors. I think these newer generation of competitors of ours have structural differences, maybe sometimes advantages versus the historical players. The cost of capital is very different. The access to information and access to distribution channel and understanding of technology is different. And it makes the investing job harder, more competitive.
Which is a good thing, right?
And forcing you to change. So I think in our world...
How does it force you to change?
So for example, in order to win deals in the growth stage, you have to go deeper, you have to source a little earlier, and you have to be more persuasive in why entrepreneurs should take your capital versus Tencent or Alibaba, for example. In the late stage, I think there's a abundance of supplies of capital, right? Before, only 4 or 5 years ago, a $200 million round is a huge round. It's almost unheard of in China, and now a $2 billion round is done almost every quarter. There's a new $2 billion round done. So it's just in the matter of 4 to 5 years, things have really changed on the supply of capital side. So I think with the presence of finite deal opportunities and seemingly infinite capital, You just have to work harder to pick the right deals.
You know, there is some concern that Ali and Tencent are as much investment firms as tech firms, and that virtually every deal, one or both, is in. You know, do you think that there is less innovation?
I'm personally very positive about Tencent and Ali's role in accelerating innovation in China, because I think what they embody, the style of investing, I think, is by design. They are more aggressive investors in China than their U.S. internet counterparts, because they are allowed to do it, because the ecosystem is a little bit less established, and there are arguably less competition here, and they are able to be more aggressive and be more effective here. But without Tencent and Ali, I think a lot of the connection of the internet capabilities and products would not be possible. There's a supply of capital, there's the technology infrastructure, right? There's cloud computing, there's artificial intelligence, there's the verification, the contribution to accelerate the user experience and technology progress is very positive from these guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.